Thank you so much for the kind introduction. Thank you for allowing me to show some of the activities that we are doing in Finland. You see my title there, and that's going to be the second part of my talk, but I added a couple of slides in the beginning because there was a big announcement this morning in Finland about the new national genome strategy. So this has been a work that the Ministry of Health and Social Affairs have been preparing for half a year now, and it came out today. So I'll show you a little bit of the discussion around that, and I kind of try to tie our pilot studies or our exercises to some of the action items in that strategy. So this is from this morning from our national news. Sorry for the Finnish language here, but you know, it's kind of bold title saying that from Finnish genome mutations now, which we are trying to find medicine for the whole world. It's a title that a journalist has made, clearly. Another title from Helsingin Sanomat from this morning is that there's going to be a new genome center in Finland in fall 2015. Let's see what that means in the end, but you know, there's a lot of discussion right now. This is from the National Institute of Health and Welfare. The biobank material now are going to be sort of put to a sort of extensive use, particularly for genomic studies. And this is related to the second announcement from this morning, which is a pharma alliance joint work with industry and Finnish academia. So international pharma industry and Finnish academia, in order to try to utilize some of the biobank data to identify drug targets, so understand the dynamics of novel drugs in the pipeline, particularly for those type of genetic variants which knock some of the genes out which are part of the related to the drug targets. Twitter, for those of you who tweet, there's a Genomistrategia hashtag, so you can have a look at what the discussion was there. So this is from this morning. Let's see what comes out of this. I mean, these strategic papers come and go sometimes, but hopefully this one sort of stays a little bit longer and has some impact. You know, we have a very young government, and there's lots of potential and possibilities in perhaps to try to sort of get some of these themes on board for their there as well. My final slide in Finnish, again, apologies, but this is from the actual Finnish genome strategy, where some of the advantages related to getting the genomes as part of the healthcare has been sketched in terms of, actually many of these were very nicely also presented in the previous talk by Markus. So definitely you can have a look, you can download this and maybe run it through Google Translator if your Finnish is not sort of yet there. But I think this is going to be also translated to English. Okay, so what's inside of the genome strategy? I mean, it's a 40-page document. I picked from the last pages, there are action items, the type of actions that need to be taken in Finland or that has been thought to be of building blocks in order to enable the genetic or precision medicine in Finland. Now this talks about genomics, so that's only one part of the broader topic of personalized medicine, but I think many of these building blocks are well defined or better defined in genomics as in many other forms of omics right now. So that's why I think it's natural to start using the genome there. So action items there, and on the red I tell about our pilot projects that are linked to some of these things. So action item number 3 is developing a national genome database. So, and I'll have 3-4 slides on that, on what does it mean. We need to understand what is a regular normal genetic variation in our different countries in order to be then able to tell the difference if a new patient comes in and he or she has a specific variant, how common is that in Finland or in other countries, and that's part of the SISU project there. Action item number 4 is a generic enabling translation of research results into clinical practice. Now don't hang on me, these translations are my own, so some of them may be sort of translated better once the official translations come. Actions 5 to 7 is a very important component of the genome strategy, and that is the education of genomics to MDs, to healthcare professional in large, as well as to general public. And I think this is a very, very key component if we want to get these things as part of the healthcare. I'll show you a couple of slides on our first personalized medicine course that we, in this spring, first time ever, offered to the medical school students in University of Helsinki. And then there's finally the enabling use of genetics as preventive healthcare decision support and health economics, and I'll show you the two of the pilot studies that are in the title as well. So this is what it's all about, how to make sense of the 3 billion letters decoded on every single cell that we have. And in principle, it's a simple task, isn't it? We just read it, and then we interpret, and then we just take the actions that it tells us. Of course, there's a little bit more to do that, but definitely we need to understand the dynamics, the variation that amongst us are there. Why am I different from you there, or why are you different from your neighbor? And that's the core essence of genetic research or human genetic research, understanding that. But in order to enable to take that to the action and move forward, we have initiated, of course, coming from Finland, it's a SISU project, but it's rooted behind the word Sequencing Initiative Suomi there. So that's how we got to the acronym. It's a collaborative project with lots of centers around the world who have done sequencing studies on Finnish samples in different research projects. There are diabetes-related projects, there's Alzheimer's-related projects, or schizophrenia projects. But what SISU project does is that it brings and creates a joint home for all of these sequences and puts them into one database so that we can look for different variants there and understand the dynamics and the variation in Finnish samples. So why do we need to do this in Finland, and why do you probably need to do the same thing in Estonia, and why don't we just use German? So why don't we just use the UK people? Well, this is part of the answer. We are all different. We cannot rely on other people's databases particularly when it comes to rare variants and when we try to diagnose or understand their dynamics. So the kind of idea, simple idea on how to use that database. There are sort of research uses, but if we think from clinical terms, it comes from the idea that we have a single patient, he or she is coming to the clinic, we need to try to understand what's wrong with, what is the cause of the disease. We need this database, a reference database, similar reference database as we know. We have reference values for LDL cholesterol levels, what is a high risk level and what is a low risk level. We need some similar database. It's just a little bit bigger in the case of genetic variant. And in order to be able to apply it to an individual patient. And we need to build a system where this individual patient also donates back the information to the reference database so that it feeds in and gets better over time. So what we've done is that we put the allele frequencies in the first version of this. This is exome sequences, so we have sequenced, or as a community, have sequenced the coding regions in the genome, those regions that take part in the protein coding, put all those variants, and there are, sorry, this is very small numbers there, but the idea is that you can go and search your favorite genetic variants or the genes in the database and see how common they are in Finnish samples. And you can actually compare also from Central European samples, are they enriched in Finland and so forth. So you can have a look, you can use this as a filtering tool or a decision support tool, in the sense that if we have a rare disease case, we see a variant there, but it's relatively common in this database, we can probably cross that variant out of the possible causes from the list if it is very common. An example, there's an international version of this done by Dan MacArthur at Broad Institute and Harvard, MIT, Massachusetts General Hospital, where you can also have a similar searches, and probably this helps you here in Estonia as well. The one thing that they've done there in the exact database is that they've divided Europe into two parts. There's Finland, and then there are non-Finnish Europeans, which is kind of, we like that division, but later on hopefully we'll get Estonians and non-Finnish Estonians, Europeans, or whatever there, but this helps us as well. An example has been shown here as a loss of function variant in LPA gene. It's again related to the cardiovascular stuff that we heard in the previous talk. It's a wonderful example of a variant that those people who have two copies of this variant, it knocks the LPA gene out from those individuals. What happens is that in the circulating blood, these individuals who are shown here, these ones here, let's see if I can use this. Yeah, they have hardly any LPA circulating, but they also don't seem to be getting heart disease, or the rate of heart disease that they are getting is much lower than those normal ones here, who have both copies of the LPA. So it's a knockout variant. It knocks the gene out, so the gene doesn't function. At the same time, it's protective for heart disease. So these are the type of stories that the pharma really are looking for. This is if they can target the product of this gene, similarly as this gene is doing, that could possibly give them ideas for new preventive drugs in terms of heart disease. Leif has good examples, I think, for diabetes, similar sort of dynamics of protective variants. And this is the hot topic now in terms of finding new drug targets. Okay, actions 5 to 7. I'm changing gears now and showing you a little bit of the first part was now SISU project, database. That's one key component in personalized medicine. That is really needed. Second thing, education of genomics to healthcare professionals, etc. Our pilot there. So what we did was that we put together a course which was not sort of forced for med school students to take in, but rather in Helsinki they have Wednesday afternoons off to do research or to study or to take those courses that they like. So we put this out and allowed 20 students to come in. They needed to sign on that. They did get credits out of this, but this was definitely not something that they could do with. They could well do without this course as well. This opened the sort of signing for this course opened at midnight on the 20th of January, and the first students were waiting and so that they could be the first ones on the course, and very fast it was all signed up. So what we did in the course, we actually got a little bit of sort of press interested in this course as well. I'll show you what we did there. So the MD students in the course, these were 7 Wednesday afternoons over the spring. They tested their coronary heart disease risk using the standard tools that we use right now to evaluate the coronary heart disease. They measured their lipids, their blood pressure. They talked about their lifestyle factors. But on top of that, we tested 50 single nucleotide polymorphism variants that have each a small addition to the risk. So they got to test their own risk set. They didn't need to actually. We allowed them also to use a ready-made anonymous set as well, but everybody wanted to test themselves. So there was not a single one who wanted to have this. There was also a panel of 75 pharmacogenomic markers there. Some of them were well sort of again alluded in the previous talk. And then we talked and taught them. We had discussions on what is P4 medicine, predictive, preventive, personalized, participatory medicine. What does it mean? What does it mean to their profession? How does this sort of change, or does it change on the way that they will later on do medicine? They learned to interpret their risk. what can they read out of this genetic risk, what is that they cannot read from their risk, and so forth, and talked about how to motivate high-risk individuals for lifestyle changes, drug metabolism, and then personalized cancer as well. So, and the students' feedback was overwhelming. I mean, what they said that is that no, we don't want a course which is like this, that you sort of corner this personalized medicine into one special course that only a few take. But rather, this should be along the whole med school. We should, in the future, sequence every med school student and then open up the relevant parts in different specialty courses. This is, and we didn't sell them this. This came from them. So anyway. So this was a wonderful experience, and we are now trying to take this over to other med schools and think about also on how to teach these concepts to the medical community in broad. Okay, before we run out of oxygen and time, I'll finish now with some of the sort of the research/development type of styles where we are trying to implement or pilot the implementation of some of the genetic concepts that we have been discussing here. So I talk about, I mean, these examples come from cardiovascular diseases. So why cardiovascular diseases? Well, it's a simple story here. Statistics Finland, statistics on what is the cause of death for Finns, and you can see that during my lifetime, the cardiovascular disease has always been on top of there. It's come down considerably from mid-80s, but still 20,000 individuals per year die out of cardiovascular disease. So what can we do to prevent cardiovascular disease? I'll jump these relatively fast through. You can you can measure these risk factors as we know and put them into. There are plenty of these risk calculators in the net, and you can estimate your own risk there. This is our data from FinRisk studies, national FinRisk studies. We've actually calculated, we've gone back to these prospective cohorts, and we sort of played around and pretended that, yes, if we now measured all these at baseline, these risk factors, we can then see who gets the disease later on and who are not. And some of these results are pretty depressing. So here's the distribution of individuals. On the x-axis, there's the risk. So say here is 20% risk over the next 10 years to get the heart disease. So these are the guys who have a high risk here. The tail is really long. Some of them have huge risks. But then majority of people are actually there in the very low end of the risk spectrum. If we follow the 2008 guidelines in Finland for statin treatments, it's actually, this is the borderline case. We should give statins to these individuals and forget about these, or at least ask them to come back later. If we looked in FinRisk, who gets the disease and where do they sit in this risk here? 4 out of 5 cases who did get the disease in the next 10 years fell into this lower risk end. 4 out of 5. And 3 out of 4 of those who landed on this high risk end did not get the disease, at least in the 10 years. Maybe they get on the 11th year or 12th year. That's possible as well. So this is the challenge right now, but still this is worth doing, obviously, as we have been told or as we tell our students in the prevention course. It's on the grand scale, it's still worth doing. But there's clearly much more you can do in terms of if we could identify the high-risk individuals better. We could also lower the limits that, as the current American guidelines say, that let's draw the line down here. And again, it's a question of precision and getting sort of either false positives or false negatives and balancing them and finding the right tune. But what we are not doing is this here. So if we look at I circulated the diseases that were the main causes of death in Finland, but here's heart disease or coronary artery disease. If you look at the heritability, so if we compare our risks for heart disease and the differences in there, how much of that comes from our genes or genetic makeup and how much comes from non-genetic factors, it's about 50-50. And there are different studies, it goes around here, some say 0.3 and some say 0.6, but the overall impression is, and the big question is, why are we not using this yellow part when we predict who gets the disease and who are not getting the disease? Isn't it kind of silly? Well, on some level, yes, we are actually doing that. We ask for the family history often, and we actually, when we measure our lipid levels, there's some genetic effect there that we are measuring as well. But now that there's more and more information coming from the genetic studies, we should really start using this. I'll skip a couple of slides because I can see that there's going to be oxygen problems soon. Just mention and rephrase what Markus said in the previous talk as well, or highlighted the familial hypercholesterolemia. If we want to single out one single disease and one single thing that we can actually prevent a lot of heart disease, it would be to identify those individuals who have the genetic risk for this, for familial hypercholesterolemia, and prevent them. And we could do that early on, and we know much of the genetic makeup. But in more general, this is what it looks like currently in terms of the heart disease risk. We have 50 SNPs that each of them have small effect for heart disease risk, from 5 to 10 to 15 to 20% per SNP. So this is something that it's kind of difficult to argue that these individually would be worth testing in individuals. But what is worth testing, and I'm showing a little bit, and again, Markus showed as well in the previous talk, that taking them jointly, taking them together, it actually starts to make difference in terms of identifying high-risk individuals. So how to use genome in prevention? Components that I've been talking about, that we need database, we need large-scale prospective data to genomic screen and follow-up recordings of health. We need algorithms, statistical models to work on the risk estimation, and then we need apps to communicate risks to individuals. So now I'm going to show you, skip a couple of slides, but show how does now the 50, or this was 28 SNPs at the time, how do they behave in terms of identifying high-risk individuals, and what's the strategy on how we could use them. So this plot here shows on x-axis the Framingham risk, so the traditional risk factors for heart disease put together in one score. If you're high up, if you have high numbers, you have high risk. If you have minus numbers here on this scale, you have low risk of disease. On y-axis, you have the genetic risk score with the currently known genetic risk common variants put together. Again, high up here, high genetic risk, low genetic risk. The way this has been plotted is that you can see, first of all, that these risk scores don't correlate. So the things that you measure from the genome is really additional, is complementary and additional information on the traditional risk factors. So even though we don't know, we know only a tiny fraction of the genetic risk right now, everything that we put there is additional on what we are doing right now in identifying high-risk individuals. Second thing, each dot is one individual in FinRisk studies. The red dots are the ones who get the disease. So you can see that, yes, the reds do have a shift to this end of the spectrum, which means that they have, some of them have these risk factors elevated. But also at the same time, the bulk of individuals, those who do get the disease, are among those who have an average risk in terms of the traditional risk factors. So we are not identifying them in our health checkups as high-risk individuals. So the idea would be that we could refine with genetic information now these individuals who sort of fall in the average risk level, and with genetic risk we could identify again a subset of, not every high-risk individual, but a subset of those who would really benefit from intervention there. Here's an example, a female, 58-year-old female, examination at the age of 58. When we look at the risk factors there and calculate her 10-year risk, it's 13.7 based on traditional risk factors. When we add her high genetic risk score is 21. This could be now a difference in terms of what sort of action, preventive action we do to this individual. This particular female got a myocardial infarction at the age of 73. Communicating, how do we communicate these risk things to individuals? And hopefully you can see this, but in the back as well. So we developed CardioCompass here, a web-based interface to communicate both traditional risk to individuals as well as genetic risk there. And there are two, so you can fill in, I mean, this is another calculator which the web is full, but there are a couple of things that make a little bit of difference here. One is that, yes, we can add the genetic risks here based on a panel of SNPs that we use. The second thing is that we don't want to give a single point of risk, particularly since it doesn't, even if a 20-year-old does all the things wrong in his life in terms of risk, it's not gonna show a large risk there. So we wanted to give a risk and a prediction, how does the risk develop if a person continues to behave the same way. The third thing that we added there, so this is an individual's risk here. You can see that it does get high up if he or she doesn't change the habits of smoking and if the diabetes is untreated and so forth. The third thing is that you could, it's the what if question. What happens if she or he here in this case stops smoking? You can see how much the risk drops. And when we've shown this around, that has been kind of a key moment to some of the persons, not to everybody, but for some of the persons, yes, exactly, this is the benefit of changing the lifestyle here. Okay, I'm starting to wrap up. I'm probably running out of, this is one thing that I want to show. We showed this to 200 people. They tested for their genetic risk. We returned the information using the tool that I showed, the CardioCompass. We asked them questionnaires before and after on how does it feel, what sort of, how do you see the risks of this type of genetic tests, what are the attitudes towards the results that you get there. And I'll highlight one answer which was given us after they received their risk. And this is a question, the information on my genetic risk in particular motivated me to take better care of my health. Now, this is not a random set of individuals. I'm not saying that this tells about the whole of Finland. These were people living in Helsinki. They were good, sort of well-educated people. But 2/3 of them said that, yes, the information on my genetic risk motivated me to take better care of this. So this is one of the promises that I'm not saying that people who, when they get their genetic information, everybody suddenly starts to behave better. But it's one component in helping them work better. So what do we do then when we see that we have a high risk for diseases? Obviously, we're trying to eat better. We try to, move around more. But then there's also the potential for intervention through statins or other drugs. And we went through this slide in the previous talk as well. But I just wanted once more highlight that this is a wonderful paper showing that those who are genetically predisposed, who have a high genetic risk, seem to be, in these 4 trials, seem to be benefiting most from statin use. And you could then ask the question, how much sort of does the low genetic risk people benefit? Finally, back to my thing in the title. So this is my last slide. I finished with this. Translating the genomic risk into healthcare, the Gene Risk Project. This is what we are doing in Gene Risk. We are putting together a cohort of 15,000 individuals who are invited and consented for continuous monitoring in this project, for getting back with future questionnaires and so forth. They're consented for returning the risk information, including the genetic information. They have a health checkup, questionnaire answering, blood sampling, laboratory analysis. We have a research database. We have an interpretation machine with sort of the CardioCompass type of approach. And then we return the data for research, data for clinicians based on a decision support system developed by Duodekim in Helsinki or Finland. But we also return the risk data to all the individuals in there. We started collecting the data in February. It's going to be going on now for until the end of next year. So unfortunately, I don't have any results to you yet to show, but maybe next time you have a meeting like this, I could come and show what sort of attitudes, how do the participants react to the information? Can we get them to motivated for lifestyle changes if their risks are high? How do the doctors react to getting these bits and pieces on top of what they already received, the huge amount of information to their screens, and so forth? With these words, I'm happy to take questions or comments.